Hi, my name is Carter. I love talking about movies, music, comics, and games. And I just watched all of Echo last night, the new MCU Disney Plus show. Also, this is my second take because I recorded my first take. I shoot on my phone and it shot in slow mo, so then it didn't transfer. And I shoot all my videos, well, most of them without a script, and so that was kind of a bummer. Anyways, I watched all of Echo and I really wanted to talk about it. And Echo is a character that was introduced in Daredevil number 9 back in the Marvel Knights run in about 1998. She's a deaf Native American amputee who is Kingpin's surrogate daughter slash niece who has some superpowers in the comics. I'm reading some of the comics right now. Her powers, I can't think of them off the top of my head, so I do apologize about that. Anyways, she was in Hawkeye, and I didn't love her in Hawkeye because she was overshadowed by Kingpin and Yelena and Nate and Kate, so it was kind of hard for her to shine. And in the end of that show, she shot Kingpin in the head. And if you've seen any of the marketing for Echo, then you know that Kingpin is alive. He has a bullet wound in his eye, but just like the comic books, the same thing happened. And so I wanted to talk about the Echo show. And starting out with the positives, like I mentioned, Kingpin is back, and he is my biggest positive. I absolutely love Daredevil Netflix. The Daredevil TV show is my favorite TV show of all time. I've seen all 3 seasons multiple times. Probably, I've seen at least season 1. I watched it the day it came out, and I've watched it like maybe once a year, if not every other year since it came out back in 2014, 2015. And I adore that show. All 3 seasons. I love the characters, especially Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk. So having Vincent D'Onofrio back in the show, in my opinion, is a massive plus, and it does the show huge favors. It not only won me over, I probably would have watched it because I'm a huge MCU geek. I'm a huge Marvel and comic geek, in case you can't tell. I would have watched it regardless, but having Kingpin in it made it like a day one watch. Like as soon as it premiered, I turned it on and watched all 5 episodes. And another positive in my, well, I'm just thinking about it, a very quick, a very binge worthy show, which I think did it a ton of favors. It makes it super easy to watch and digest. You just click play on the next episode. And the first episode is about 50 minutes long, 50, and then it goes down to 34, which I'll talk about later. And so I really appreciated just having a quick, easy series to binge and not waiting week for week. I think if we had to wait week for week, it would have rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So I'm pretty glad that they did it this way. Another positive I have is the character of Maya Lopez slash Echo. Alaqua Cox is phenomenal in this show. She is deaf in real life and also an amputee, and she really gives it her all. As you can probably guess, she doesn't talk in the show, and so she fully emotes through ASL or her body language, and she makes it extremely easy to tell for the viewer how she is emoting, how she's feeling. You can read her body language with ease, so she does a fantastic job in the show portraying the lead character. In fact, all the performances here are actually very good. There's only maybe one that I thought was just a little cheesy, and it had nothing to do with the performer. It was the way it was written. It was the Biscuits character, which is one of Maya's cousins. He was just kind of weird and off kilter, didn't quite fit the tone of the show. He's like the comic relief character, but it came in a very unnatural and just strange way. Unlike her grandfather, who was very funny and just kind of like a natural, regular guy kind of way. That was my only issue with the performances. Other than that, all across the board, they were great. The action was phenomenal as well, especially in episodes 1 and 3, and also in 4. I honestly can't remember. They all kind of blend together. Episode 1, of course, has an excellent fight scene against a costumed hero, which I loved. And episode 3 just has a big action sequence in a roller rink that I thought was great. It was balls to the wall, all out, very brutal, very violent, which I adored. I will take any ounce of violence I can get. It's not nearly as violent as any of the Marvel Netflix shows. Maybe Iron Fist, it's been a few years since I watched it, but it's not nearly as violent as like Daredevil or Punisher, but it does have quite a bit more blood than your average MCU fare, which was appreciated. So overall, for the positives, I'd say the show was a pretty breezy watch. I really enjoyed just binging it. For the big positives, I thought the action was great. The lead performances were great as well. Having Kingpin is always a plus, and I love spending any more time I can with any characters from the Netflix universe. I guess now it's canon. And so I enjoyed quite a bit of Echo, especially as someone who didn't love Echo and Hawkeye. I was pleasantly surprised at how decent this series was. Know that I said decent. I didn't say great, but I didn't say bad. I don't think the series is terrible, but I also don't think it's great. There's quite a few things holding it back, so let's get right into it. And heading into the mixed, I think one thing I'm going to say right off the bat is don't get your hopes up for any big cameos or reveals. This is solely centered on Maya Lopez. I know there was a ton of reports in the like leak scooper Twitter circles that were running around about Matt Murdock having a sizable role to play in a few episodes. I would cut your expectations on that. And just as a heads up, I'll have some light spoilers for the season. It's in episode 1. I don't think it's a big spoiler, but if you want to know anything about the series, then turn your ears off for the next 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. In episode 1, Maya comes to blows with Daredevil, and that's it. That's all he's in the season. I think it's very important just to get that out of the way so you don't have your expectations built up too much. Side note, I did totally get out of like the leak scooper verse because it was just building up false expectations, and too many people will just end up having disappointment expectations. And I'm glad I did. Unfortunately, I still caught a few leaks and rumors for Echo, and I think you can really tell that some of them were true because a lot of them said that the series would be about 6 or 7 episodes, and it's 5. You can really tell, especially in the first and fifth episodes. The first episode, for example, is about 55 minutes long, whereas the fifth episode is about 36 minutes without credits. And you can really tell that there was a lot of stuff cut and reassembled in the editing room, or it was just cut right before they shot, so the script was missing quite a bit. The first episode is pretty jumbled, but I actually liked it quite a bit overall. It moved at a good pace, even though it was a little clunky. I really enjoyed just getting a recap of Maya. I didn't have time to rewatch Hawkeye, so unfortunately, I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? But it does that for you in the show, which is super nice of them. Like I mentioned, the editing and pacing suffered the most from this, and I do think that the action suffered as well because the action is great up until the finale. Really, the show is pretty great up until the finale. Episode 2 is a little slow for my taste. Mostly just has Maya kind of going around town, meeting her family, you get reintroduced to everyone. I think that's about it for my mixed. Just the pacing and the editing were a little clunky at times. And like I mentioned, the show wasn't perfect. So getting into the negatives, the biggest one for me here was the finale. The finale just feels insanely rushed, like every other Disney Plus Marvel property. The finale just throws you in, and it's about 30 minutes of like, whoa, whoa, and I don't know what it is with MCU and not letting the finales breathe whatsoever unless it's Loki, but they totally threw everything under the bus here and just sideswipe it all away. I don't like how anything was resolved in the finale. I think they relied maybe on a little bit of comic relief to defeat some of the threats. So yeah, the threats were just removed in a weird way, and Kingpin versus Maya, that is resolved in a strange way as well, where it just feels like it's wrapped up way too quickly so he can get on to being in Daredevil Born Again and she can get on to doing whatever she's gonna do next. So it just felt awkward when it wrapped up. And also, her conflict is built up with two of her family members throughout the whole season, her cousin and her grandma. She does have a good moment with her grandma, but with her cousin, it's just dropped. And that's it. It stopped. It's ended. That's it. That was very awkward and very clunky, and it was handled extremely poorly, in my opinion. Speaking of things being handled extremely poorly, my biggest issue with the show is the mystical and supernatural elements. In all the marketing, it was portrayed as a very grounded show, similar to Daredevil Netflix. And Daredevil Netflix, as you know, in season 2 kind of got a little kooky with the hand and with Nobu being resurrected and with them, putting everything into the black sky. And they tried to work a little bit of that in, but went way overboard with the mystical and fantastical elements to a point where it becomes very clunky. Throughout the series, you're shown flashbacks, which I think worked well, and it kind of is explained in the fifth episode. But the execution of how Maya's powers work and how the supernatural element is resolved was so clunky and corny that me and my wife just started laughing when you see it on screen. I don't know how to say it without spoiling it, but you'll know in the finale there's multiple things where Maya is using her powers and you can just see it and laugh. And then I get what they were doing with the theme of family and heritage and legacy, but it was so corny watching two other normal people fight off Kingpin's goons who probably have had no physical training at all. I just started laughing and I was so disappointed at how they resolved that. I think it was absolutely ridiculous. And so the mystical and supernatural elements just felt very undercooked for the show overall. which was a bummer because I was kind of liking where it was going. I was intrigued, and unfortunately, it kind of just wet the bed with that one. Adding on to just my dislike of the finale, like I mentioned before, the editing and the pacing are very bad in it. It feels like it's missing complete scenes. There's a scene where a character's like screaming, like, "What did you do? What did you do to me?" And then, boom, they're in a car being driven off to we don't know where. And it's just that's it. And that's the exit. And it was just so awkward and odd, felt stunted, and you kind of just feel cheapened. And the show, without getting into too much spoilers, I don't think this is really that big of a spoiler. Kingpin is someone who is so menacing and terrifying because if you've watched any of Daredevil, he will snap on a dime and just murder whoever he wants to, whoever he can to adjust himself to get into a higher power level. And here it doesn't really feel like he will do that. He feels a little tamer, and maybe we'll get some context to that in Daredevil Born Again. But part of that did disappoint me. However, I kind of do feel like that's a tiny bit of a nitpick, but it still does feed into my dislike of the finale. So overall, for Echo, the episodes themselves were pretty good until the finale. It kind of just finished too early. Unfortunately, it kind of just, I don't know how to say this without sounding sexual, so I won't. It just kind of peaked too early. And so everything has felt undercooked in the finale. Things don't really get resolved in a satisfying manner with really any characters. Unfortunately, it really kind of irked me how it wrapped up. However, that post credit scene was pretty awesome. I'm very excited to see where the characters go next. But again, it doesn't take away from my dislike of the finale as a whole overall. So, what did I think of Echo as a TV show? Like I mentioned before, it was decent. I was surprised that it was good because I was pretty worried reading the reports. I didn't really want a spin off about Echo, but I mean, what can I say besides the fact that it looked phenomenal? The technical side of everything was very, very good. I forgot to mention that in my positives. It just looks like it's being held to a higher standard production wise. Apart from some shoddy CGI in episode 2, the show looks great and I'm very glad that I watched it. I will take any and all Kingpin that I can get. So overall, guys, Echo is decent. In my opinion, the finale totally crapped the bed with it, though. What did you think? Please let me know down in the comments below. And yeah, I recommend that you check Echo out. I would definitely give it like a thumbs up, or in my terms that I'm still trying to work out, give it like a 6.5 out of 10. It was good. It was definitely worth, like the 3.5 hours it took. It's very easy, very quick binge. So I would recommend it. As always, guys, my name is Carter, and have a great rest of your day.